Hi, this is Andrew A.J. Johnson. Today I didn't feel like being on camera, but I really wanted to address something that is a really good question, which is, what do I really think about my early work? As an artist, I am open and honest, and over the years, I've shared many of my original song ideas. My early work is no exception. It's one of these things where I've said this before that I think most artists wouldn't want anything to do with their early work. A lot of artists try to distance themselves from that. I don't really understand that because let's think of an example like, an artist like The Weeknd started out on YouTube. Well, that's not really a secret, is it? I'm sure you can go and find a lot of his early work, or say it's Katy Perry. Most people know she started out as a Christian artist, and you can likely find that early work. Before Lady Gaga was Lady Gaga, I'm pretty sure you can find a lot of her early work as well. And I don't think she would deny anything about that, you know what I mean? Even at the level I'm at as an artist, I personally don't think there's any reason to deny my past. And I think also just because the fact that I'm a millennial, I'm okay to share parts of my life. I've done that through video logs and through my music. I think it makes sense to share different things that you're working on during different periods of your life. That's just my feeling on it. As well, I cross over into this area. I don't even want to say like a teacher necessarily, but on the whole idea of DIY music, a number of times I've shared, some of what I'm doing and, how I got started and some of the bits of equipment or software I'm using to make this music. I don't think there's anything necessarily secretive about making music. There are a lot of parts about it that are fascinating, but I don't think that at this point there's a lot that's really secret. And if you're an artist, music is a part of you. And I don't really set a specific time on when, my music became quote unquote good. I think to most who have listened to anything I've done, you would say that my stuff started to get good around 2017, 2018. But to me, it's just my music is my music, and I've been doing it for many years, and I try to talk positively about the early work. This time, I really thought I would get into what do I really think? To be really real about this, really getting into the things about my early work that I know I could have done differently with what I know now. And that there are quite a few songs of mine that I did early on that I really don't care for, but there is still some qualities about the early work that has this charm and a certain kind of innocence to it that I can't really, it's really difficult to try to recreate something, So of course my first album, which is shorter than your standard album, was Bizarro, and that was written and composed and recorded during the years 2009 to 2011. Actually, I should point out again that there is a weird discrepancy when my music actually started, because technically there were stuff that I was thinking of recording somewhere around probably even as early as late fall 2007, getting into 2008. That's when I had a song, Nobody Knows. A lot of this stuff goes really far back, honestly, but I just say that I started around 2009, developing a bulk of songs that I worked on. Bizarro felt completed to me as this kind of, it's sort of an electronic, orchestral, experimental song that I haven't been able to write anything else quite like it. I've thought for many years it would sound a lot better if you had, say, a band, like a vocal group, and you were to really make a nice sounding song out of it. But with what I had, I think I did a fair job. If I had access to the original file, I would turn up the vocals. I think the vocals are a little bit low. I think that speaks to me about my own discomfort with my own voice. So I definitely would change that. I would want to update some of the synthesizers or some of the drums and stuff.
Argumental, philosophical, now please. I don't know what you said, really. Bizarro, needing sorrow. Bizarro, for tomorrow. It's bizarro.
Overall, I just think as an arrangement and as a song structure, it's still a very interesting piece, as were quite a few from those early years, like Doppelganger. It really foreshadowed, actually, my, I guess, alter ego that would come out when I started to party a bit more when I got into my early 20s. But at the time of writing Doppelganger, I had no idea that would be part of my life. But sure enough, I ended up meeting my alter ego once I started to kind of embrace the party lifestyle. So that was basically a song about that. It's not talking about a literal doppelganger. It's more of a metaphorical doppelganger. I think there was another one, Fan. I really liked that one. Yeah, there would be some things I would change about it now. I wouldn't even write anything like that now, with all the stops and starts and different things. It's kind of neat in a way because you can hear me thinking as I'm singing these songs. It's very early songwriting efforts and attempts at producing and stuff, and there's some really interesting sounds going on there as far as vocals and creating this choral effect. There was a lot of these elements stayed with me all these years. Really goes way back to the very first songs I ever did. And this certainly sort of retro futuristic sound, like on Take It, that was probably 2011. It sounds like something from the early 2000s. And really, if you're thinking of the 2000s, a lot of that sound is still rooted in the sounds of the 1990s and the 1980s. And I was very much into that kind of sound and building these stacks of vocals. And not that I don't want to put myself in the same category. It's probably not the best idea to say it. I don't have anything else to compare it to. But, I was really developing as a producer, music producer. What I'm doing is tuning into things that I think more people can, but perhaps don't for a variety of reasons. But it's the kind of stuff that producers like Richard Carpenter can do, Brian Wilson, these arrangers, producers that can suspend their thoughts really and hear these sounds in their head all at once. I work in a very similar way where I don't just hear one melody. I'm hearing a production in my mind, and I want to bring that into the world as close to possible as what I'm hearing. It's more of a skill, really, to be able to tune into that imaginative part of yourself as a musician, artist, producer. I think even as early as 2009, that's the way I was thinking of it, and what I was trying to achieve after all these years is still trying to create, not reinvent the wheel necessarily, but imagining different sounds and different textures in music, and of course adding my own personal spin on that. For an album like Bizarro, of course there's things I would do differently, and I'm not going to pretend that that's like the best kind of music or anything, but for myself, if I was really interested in an artist, of course I'm going to look back and I want to see different projects that they had done before. So I guess, my thinking of releasing the early stuff is if I do have any fans, people that are interested in listening to me, well, why wouldn't they want to hear more of who I am and the different forms of my art? So anyways, then I get into Treat Me This Way. Treat Me This Way is an album that, upon retrospect, it's very dark. It's a lot more melancholy than I remembered it, even more frustrated than I remembered it, because, well, I'll get into this. So I know one of the songs I was working on this was recorded during the years 2012 to 2014. One of the first songs I was doing was I Want Your Stank. In many ways, it's kind of a disgusting song. It's kind of a gross song, but really what I was actually doing there was trying to get away from this idea that this image of myself as this church boy or preppy kind of goody two-shoes, and I think Want Yo Stank. I don't know if there's any way you can look at that and think that that's something that some preppy church boy would come up with, you know. It's me trying to break out of that image, as well as a song, Living with Reason and Rationality, that was a direct response to an experience I had in 2007 where these evangelicals actually came to the church that I used to attend when I was in my youth. These folks were talking stuff that was anti-LGBTQ+. And as a 15-year-old at the time, I was very upset. I was extremely, I was very angry with that these speakers came into the church and were really trying to get at messages that were actually what I would categorize as spiritual abuse. Certainly by the time I was recording Living with Reason and Rationality, that was me coping with my frustrations with the church, the way that they would be silent on social issues and issues that affect minority groups. And that silence from the churches over many, many years, as somebody that used to go to church quite often, now I don't so much anymore. I just didn't feel, being who I am, that I was accepted in, well, pretty much any church. And Living with Reason and Rationality is my way of coping with my frustrated feelings with the church, their politics, and really hurtful things that they had done. You know, every time there's some issue that happens with a minority group, whether that's, you know, indigenous or black or LGBTQ+ or women or something, they always act surprised. It's always like, oh, it's the first time something's ever happened. Meanwhile, it's like all along they've dropped their sense of caring and understanding and responsibility, really, to care about minority groups and vulnerable people. So right off the bat, from the beginning of this album, I'm coming out already with this sense of frustration, and there's just a different side of me.
I want your stank. I want your bad stank. Slide on me and give me your stank. I want your stank. I want your stank. I want your stank.
Then I did the Disturbed and songs like Undreamt Love, which Undreamt Love is actually, it was another song that sort of foresaw events that would play out later on in my life. It's very interesting how music has this mysterious way about it. And the title track, Treat Me This Way, if I could turn up the volume on the vocals, I would. I think there's actually quite a lovely quality in my voice at that time that I can't do that now. If I try to do it now, if I sing Treat Me This Way now, I feel like I'm doing an impersonation of myself, because there was just something so innocent and very natural about the way I sung that, and I just wish I produced it better. It made it more musical than this sort of detuned kind of... I know what I was going for, but production-wise, I didn't really meet the assignment. So
I feel like hurting myself when you do me this way, and I owe it all to you. And I feel like hurting myself when you treat me this way, and I owe it all to you.
But overall, it's an anti-bullying song, and gee, I don't know. There's just so many parts of "Treat Me This Way." Like I could talk forever actually about my early work because I learned so much more in retrospect about why I was writing a certain way, the production choices I made at that time. It's very fascinating. But yeah, "Treat Me This Way," I thought it turned out fairly well considering it came out of a dream state. There's been quite a few times I've dreamed songs, and then I would compose it after. I think I've learned that the trouble with doing that, as kind of cool as it is, or I like to think it's a cool practice, sometimes it doesn't actually make a lot of sense. You know, musically it doesn't make sense because it's from a dream state, and there's considerations to be made, you know, when you are sort of reimagining a song from a dream state or even, a different state of consciousness. And I won't get into any other ways you can experience consciousness, but on that note, let me move into I'll Make It Now. It was the third album I did over about an 8-year period. I would say was my early work, 7 to 8 years. And Make It Now was the third album I did. And yeah, there's a lot of things that I wish I could have done differently. Something like Sky Funk. Man, that could have been a much better song. But you know what I realized? What I was trying to do and why I opened that album with that song was because I was trying to recreate Wancho Stank. But, you know, for me in 2015, as a 24-year-old, I wasn't, for whatever reason, I didn't realize that you cannot recreate an original idea like that. Sky Funk could have been a lot better, and I was sort of trying to redo or improve upon some kind of formulaic idea I had for Wancho Stank. Well, it didn't really work. To say the least, it was me trying to tap into the same energy as a Wancho Stank. Sky Funk was just less effective at it. I think if you did a whole rearrangement of Sky Funk, you could come up with something really interesting out of the melody and lyric, and it needs a whole reworking. I know I spent a long time on it, and I was frustrated by it. The frustration I felt makes sense, because I get it now. Like, I was trying to do something that I already did.
Oh, we are tonight, we're on fire. Get the song to the sky.
It didn't carry that same free feeling as previous songs. Yeah, you cannot recapture the same thing. Anyhow, so then I get into what's another one off of I'll Make It Now was Text You on the Phone. I remember I wrote it after a conversation I had on a dating app. You see, the thing about my art, too, is sometimes people don't understand, and for good reason, I get it. Like, when am I being funny? When am I being serious? It can be hard to tell what my tone is sometimes. Well, when I was recording Text You, I was being sarcastic because, you know, I was on this dating app and I wasn't really having the greatest conversation, let's say. I was writing the song, Yeah, I'll Text You on the Phone, in a sarcastic way. So I think the whole thing about that song, it didn't resonate with anybody because it was hard to tell what I was really saying. It was a song that was sarcastic, and noticing already by 2014, 2015, I was seeing this real lack of reciprocation in terms of communication online. And I mean, that had already been like that for a number of years, and I think it's gotten worse every year since. So this idea of, yeah, I'll text you on the phone, like, yeah, right, because you never do. You never text me back. You don't respond. You don't reply to nothing. Yeah, all right, hello. That's what that whole song was about. There was a real kind of humor in the sort of silly instrumentation that it was. What else was on that album? A Center of the Universe. Well, I don't know if there's anything else I could do on that one. I'm trying to think now. Yes, summer of 2015. I was just walking down a street one day and I just had that melody in my mind, and I think I might have jotted something down, and then I went home and probably hummed it into a voice recorder. Then I made some quick instrumental thing, which is basically what you hear. Yeah, the thing about that though is I would reverse the way the vocal arrangement is. I did the verses like you would do the chorus, and the chorus like you would do the verses. So it's actually a disorienting song, and I actually didn't mean to do it that way. I was doing that because I wasn't happy with my vocals on the verse. So I layered my voice on the verses, but then I left the chorus basically the way the verses should sound. Like, I don't know how else to say, but I think it's one of these that probably could use a re-recording. You know, it's not bad. It's an interesting philosophical question, and I mean, it makes for a very good poetry, but also it's a very draggy song. It's very draggy, as is Hurts Deep. Yeah, that was 2015. I can hear in my voice I was trying to go for some different sounds. The lyric is nice. I wish I sang it better.
Who can you count on? Even though it hurts so bad, and you wanna grieve. We're busy mixing fun time, going overtime. It's so damn brief. We're bought in the system.
It was a fair vocal, but could have been done better. And then finally, I think I'll Make It Now. I'll Make It Now was finished in 2016. It was the last song I recorded that really was from that period of my life. And then, you know, that was sort of the end of an 8-year cycle. And then another 8-year cycle starts with from 2016 up until this year. Now I feel I'm heading into a new cycle. Anyway, yeah, I'll Make It Now. I wish I could have filled out the verses a bit better. It's really not a complicated song. It's pretty straightforward. I really like the innocence of it.
Taking it down, trying to find something to do. I'll make it now. I'll make it now. I'll make it now.
You know, it really was the last of an era for me, out of that sort of trilogy that was Bizarro, Treat Me This Way, and the I'll Make It Now projects. That was an early version of Andrew A.J. Johnson, and there are qualities that stayed with me from those years, and there's pieces about that I miss too, you know? Between the ages about 18 to 25, it's just the innocence that I still was attached to, in the, you know, I wasn't as corrupted yet. I mean, yeah, that criticism of me as a church boy came from somewhere. To be honest, I mean, there are parts of that's not so bad. You know, to have been thought of as, you know, he's a good person who, you know, achieves things in life. Well, what a terrible thing, you know. That kind of sense of myself was still intact. It was still more moody than I remember it. Anytime I look back at the early work, it's like, wow, it really was very sad. And then in my later 20s, I was trying to be more upbeat, energetic, I guess almost to overcompensate for the fact that I spent so much of my early writing talking about being so frustrated and I'm so down and in the dumps and on, carrying on and on. But, you know, there still is so much about that early work that I pick up the pieces. Like, you know, I think of music sort of similarly, or collecting music rather, like archaeology, picking up the pieces that tells the story about that artist. I still learn more all the time about myself when I take a moment, I sit down, I think of that early work, and still haven't even processed a lot of the stuff that I did in my later 20s either. A lot of them are very thoughtful, and they are unique. I mean, if you think of it as some sort of a discount artist, which I sort of have been called before, or referred to as, you know, sort of that artist you would find in the bargain bin, you know, that's whatever. I guess so, but, you know, a knockoff Michael Jackson, I'll take any form of compliment if I can. I just twist it around into a compliment in my mind. Hey, Discount Jackson isn't that bad of a name to be remembered by. No, but really, I can hear the development, how long of a development Andrew A.J. Johnson was, like I'm saying, from 2008, though I really really feel I got going on it 2009. It still fascinates me because it's pure. Before I had all kinds of teachers and producers and different people in my ear trying to move me different ways and stuff, which even as a one-man band, I definitely had that. You're being swayed into all these different kind of directions. Yeah, if I look at myself as the closet performer I was in those early years, there's a purity in the form of Andrew A.J. Johnson. And as I say, everything that I do today, all of it stems from those early records. Like some of it, like the songs Alien Groove and The Dancer, that was all stuff from like 2010 that I just re-recorded. And even still, something you don't like. Actually, it was a fragment of a piece of music that I reworked it. To tell you the truth, just a lot of these early ideas, they actually were what I would consider fairly good songs. I just didn't really have access to all of the skills I have now. And even now, I don't have access to studio and producers and engineers and musicians in the band and background singers. And, I really don't have all of that. I never had really all of those resources to get these ideas out. I still think there is quite a number of them that, maybe if it wasn't me, if you had another vocalist on it, some of it really might not sound half bad. If I had somebody else covering my songs, some of these things could really do fairly well. I can't say they would not sell tons of records, or it's not going to go viral or something, but this is stuff that it would get placed on playlists, on streaming services, and that. I think there's quite a body of work here that, yeah, even in the early stuff, I can hear it. Man, yeah, if you get some really good, the expensive producers on it, you really could go to town on some of those lyrics and melodies that I started with. I really do think everything I've done is a blueprint for something that's much greater. And I have no problem sharing that, even if I can't get into a space to be able to talk to the best producers in the world. Maybe there's somebody that can hear my music that's an aspiring artist, and maybe something I do inspires them, and that means more to me than anything else. Anyway, I'm going to stop talking in a bit here, but I just don't see any reason why it feels like I've done something wrong for having shared. I've done the crime of sharing my art. If you can believe it, I've had a lot of criticism about that. Well, my art in general. Definitely the early stuff. I don't see any reason why that cannot be shared and why it can't be released. And, I really want to talk about it, but the thing is, I don't think I've really been as honest about it before. Of course, I would do so much of my early work differently. There's so much more there that they could be, but I'm just glad that I got them down. At any point in the future, they're there. If I want to do a Taylor Swift move and re-record all of my stuff at some point, you know what? I guess I could. Maybe it's kind of irritating. It would be a bit annoying. How much of this stuff can you really do over? But certainly maybe a few of these, I would definitely see myself probably looking back, because I think even if you were an artist that was popular, say, in the 70s or 80s, but you really got going in the 60s, even by the time that artist would get to their later career, well, they would still romance about their stuff in the 60s, and that they know they cannot write anything like that again. They would think that there's something very special about the 60s and the way that music sounds. I think there is something in all of this early stuff. It was very much attached to the early 2000s that's really rooted, as I said in the beginning, in the 90s. And I I am a 90s baby, and I romanticize about it, and there are parts of that I pine for it. I just enjoy this music that, of course, I can't write that way anymore. I'm still the same person, but, there is something very special about the history of a person's body of work, their discography, and it really tells a story. I'm just glad that I recorded the songs. There are people that are interested in hearing some of that, and those are the songs that each album along the way was sort of a green light for the next one. If there was something about, Bizarro that had maybe a few, not very much, but it had some people talking. And then you get Wancho Stank, that got some people talking, and I'll Make It Now, and definitely by Move Your Feet, that was one actually that sort of, I redeemed myself at that point. But the point is that there was always something about these albums and these songs that there was something in there you said, wow, there definitely is something, there's something in there, and I remember that about that guy doing that crazy song, if it was some kind of sad, angry song or novelty song or love song, miscellaneous kind of song, there's qualities and stuff about that all, it led to the next thing. There's a whole evolution here, and I could spend the rest of my life just talking about the 10 albums I've done so far, or I consider it 10, but I mean, I'm sure it would depend who you're talking to. I'm sure there's folks that would say I didn't actually record as many as 10 albums. To me, I think it's up there, including covers and these sort of various offshoots that I've done over the years. So personally, I learn all the time through my music, through the old stuff, through the new stuff, and songs that are in its primordial state. Like currently, there's songs that I'm doing now, actually. I have songs yet to record that sort of reminds me of the early years. Hopefully it'll sound good. I don't know. I haven't recorded it yet. That's sort of an aspect of myself that never went away. I'm trying to push the limits, and somewhere between what I think is good and maybe edging on cringy, maybe just a little bit better than that, but still maybe a little bit so bad it's good. Or just that it's imperfect, but that's what you kind of like about it, because it's got this charm and this passion and energy about it. Anyways, yeah, I'm sure even the stuff I'm working on this year and next year, all of that's going to have different stuff to tell me. Like, I still haven't even processed the last album I did. Butterscotch and Sophistication is still taking me time to even figure out some of the layers of stuff I was going through. I've learned so much, and I learn by doing this the things that I sound good doing, and the things like, a song like The People Around You, where I'm rapping or thinking I'm rapping, that's not really a good idea for me. Sometimes I do things where I leave it in too much of a demo form, too much of an incompleted sounding form. I'm always trying to fill out my songs, but I can hear in that early stuff, I didn't yet know how to transition into different musical ideas. To this day, I still have so much to learn about that. Just different tricks of the trade that I could use, and even updating that. But honestly, I don't actually like the update in some of the production choices that are made these days, because I don't like chipmunk voices, and I don't really like so much of this feeling of like you're underwater and these ambient vocal sounds that has a tail that goes on forever. As much as I can talk forever, and I have songs that sound like they go on forever, I don't think I would put anything that really has such a long reverb tail, if that makes sense to anybody out there. But I just don't know how to get out of this conversation, by the way. And I never know how to get out of my art. I think I do. I say this will be the last album I ever do. Then, because it's me, I end up doing something else, and before I know it, I'll have done 500 of these things. Anyhow, I think that's it for now. I just really wanted to answer, what do I really think about my early recordings? I think that sums up pretty much all that I have to say. If you've enjoyed this banter, this kind of rambling, this fun trip of a person that I am, please like and subscribe and share my music. You don't have to share this conversation because I know I am not everybody's cup of tea. I don't know, maybe there's some songs out there that are worth sharing. I don't mind it if you do. Thank you so much for listening to me. Take care. Bye for now. Be well.
Let's shine, dancing